And the future of Open RAN access networks in the US is focused on the collaboration between industry and the public sector. That includes the National Telecommunications and Information Administration, that's the NTIA. That's for the advancement of highly efficient 4G, 5G open radio unit extensible platforms, driving power efficient, interoperable, and also open wireless networks. Today's panelists will discuss how innovations plays a role in Open RAN, the broader industry impact of deploying Open RAN and standardized network infrastructures, and also wireless infrastructure. And joining us are Amanda Tolman. She's director of the Wireless Innovation Fund, again, that of the NTIA. Next to her is Glenn Laxdal. He's chief executive officer, that at Airspan Networks. And also with Airspan is Kyle Allen. He's Senior Vice President of Strategic Operations. And speakers, welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good to be here. Thanks for being here. Amanda, if you don't mind, I was going to go right into this with you, starting off with really how has the NTIA's Public Wireless Supply Chain Innovation Fund really expanded these opportunities for innovation and also leadership?
Yeah, well, good morning, Abe, and thank you very much for having me today. So the overall mission or objective of the Innovation Fund really is to drive the commercial adoption of open and interoperable telecommunications networks. So we were handed a load of money to try to address that problem. At the outset, we really recognized the need for strategic investments into this ecosystem. The funding that we had, while large for government spending, is fairly insignificant when it comes to the commercial space, right? So you've got companies like Ericsson and Nokia and Huawei spending billions of dollars a year in research and development. And the challenge that we faced at the government was to try to leverage the funding that we had to have the biggest possible impact that we could to try to achieve our overall objective. So being as thoughtful as we possibly could about how those investments could be sustaining and have the largest impact. So, with that approach, we developed what we call multiple notice of funding opportunities. They're basically government solicitations, right? So putting a call out to industry to say, these are our thoughts as far as what the technology gaps are, and doing so in a sequential order to try to address the technology gaps in steps. So with that approach, we really wanted to build a foundation, recognizing that at the time, right, in 2021, 22, there were, or there still are, up-and-coming companies in the Open RAN ecosystem. Many of them don't have the resources and the financial backing that some of the larger companies do, and might not have access to testing at scale, might not have the ability to go through interoperability, security testing, energy efficiency, whatever it might be. So we recognize the need to develop and deliver these testing laboratories as resources for the ecosystem. So that was our first step to try to drive innovation such that the laboratories are funded, right? They're subsidized by the US government. New companies can go in and take a look at what they might be developing. Does their innovation do what they intended it to do? And with the government funding, what we really tried to harness with this first investment is to drive a sustainability with the laboratories. So the thought that once the government money runs out, the labs are sufficiently set up so that companies can come in and pay for services as you go. The hope is, again, it's not as expensive as one would have to set up their own laboratory in their space, but really having the labs be resources. So, we've got 3 laboratories up and running. I think so far so good. They are getting used quite a bit. So I feel like building that foundation and being, stepping forward, being that accelerant for new technologies is really the hope of the laboratories. So building that foundation, and then the next step we really wanted to focus on was the hardware challenge. So recognizing there really aren't many, or weren't at the time, many U.S. radio unit manufacturers, right? It's really hard to break in, and part of Open RAN is to try to break up those proprietary single vendor provided solutions and inject some US companies providing hardware solutions as part of a open and interoperable telecommunications stack. So NOFO 2, we went out with a fairly significant portion of the funding to try to address that gap. And I think what I'm really most proud of with that solicitation we put out was driving partnerships between radio unit manufacturers and mobile network operators, and really trying to push the ecosystem so that when the government funding runs out, that there is a customer for that product at the end, at least to the best of our ability, really trying to shape that, and recognizing that having a science project just to have a science project is not good use of government money. So how best can we facilitate those US companies, those US innovations, getting into the ecosystem and really helping us at the Innovation Fund achieve our objective. So I am very hopeful that those investments that we've made will have an impact and really shape and drive the adoption of open and interoperable.
Yeah. Glenn, Amanda referenced NOFO 2, and for the audience out there, for the few out there that don't know what that is, that's the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Of course, Airspan Networks was a recipient of NOFO 2 funding, and I wanted to ask Glenn, and of course Kyle as well, how have you been able to leverage Open RAN and the funding itself to create these innovative solutions that Amanda referenced?
Well, the NOFO 2. But first, the whole construct of the NOFO 2 was really well set up, and I think Amanda summarized this pretty well. NOFO 1 targeting the investment in interoperability labs, NOFO 2 identifying that there wasn't a broad base of radio vendors in the ecosystem, and very few radio vendors that were based here in the U.S. We are a radio vendor that is based here in the U.S., but we were able to take this funding and just put our radio development on steroids. And so what will ultimately result is we, together with the other recipients, will be able to expand the ecosystem. And in our case, we're expanding the ecosystem not just in the radio area, but we're also expanding the ecosystem in the baseband area because those two will work together. We relish the fact that we're going to be able to take our radio portfolio and drive it into a much larger market opportunity. And we have strong relationships already with some global operators, Rakuten to name one, and we'll have an opportunity to deploy our radios in volume across those those operators that have already embraced the Open RAN technology. But we also see other operators on the cusp of embracing Open RAN technology, and new operators that we're going to be able to sell our radios into. And so I think that what is happening here is the opportunity to create a pretty broad-based ecosystem, not just Airspan, but smaller vendors that are going to be able to use Open RAN as well as use the funding accelerator that comes in from NOFO 1 and NOFO 2 to provide a sustainable business for us going forward and to move into these new markets and disrupt. And at the end of the day, when you've got a market that is dominated by large behemoth vendors, it is not subject to a lot of disruption. What we want to do with Open RAN, of course, is move in, create best-in-class solutions to be able to disrupt the industry. And in addition to just the radio development that we are able to ramp up pretty significantly, we also have an opportunity to bootstrap using the funding from NOFO 2, but to bootstrap ourselves into some new solution areas. One of the key advantages of Open RAN is its programmability. All the interfaces are defined and open. The software architecture to support this defined and open set of interfaces is modular. It's usually modular. It has to be. You've got a CU, a DU, a RIC, applications, RApps, XApps. You've got devices, each of which is programmable. And for the Open RAN vendors that have moved into this market, they've defined very modular software solutions, often cloud-first technologies or microservice-based technologies, which opens up the opportunity for more and more customization. Something that is unique, something that can take advantage of this programmability. And as a result, I think on the Open RAN side, not just in radios, where we have a very good opportunity to open a new market for high volume radios into the mobile network operator space, but we're also, as we speak, making very good progress in niche segments like private networks. And private networks usually require a degree of programmability, a degree of customization. And Open RAN is a very good choice, very good technology choice for anything that requires a little bit of customization of programmability. One of the markets that we've gone after, just to call it out, because I'm proud of it, is that on our side, the air-to-ground system that we're deploying into GoGo, our lead customer here in North America, not only uses Open RAN radios, which we are actively developing and deploying as we speak, but it uses our own baseband solution in the ground stations, our own air cards that go in the private business jets, and what the service is a broadband service to enable broadband connection to the private jets that allow you to have Wi-Fi working inside of the private jet, connected to a broadband 4G and 5G link. This is a system that is complex. We had to solve a number of technical challenges, but we used Open RAN. It's end-to-end Open RAN. And why? Because of its programmability. We had to solve the distance problem. These jets are flying, sometimes 300 kilometers away from the base station. We had to solve the velocity problem. Our software can manage jets traveling at up to 1,200 kilometers an hour. We had to introduce interference-based scheduling because when you're an aircraft looking down, you see all base stations, and so there's a lot of interference that you have to deal with. And we had to introduce this high-speed beam tracking and positioning, all of which exceeds the capabilities that were in the 4G and the 5G standards. And so we use Open RAN to implement that. And that is an important attribute within the Open RAN capability that we can take advantage of. We're end-to-end programmable all the way out to the UE that is situated inside of the aircraft. And so wherever there's these private network use cases that require something unique, some degree of programmability, Open RAN becomes a very good solution because of its programmability. But that solution also is applicable back into the mobile network operator space, and we'll talk about that a little bit later in the discussion, the traction that we see going on within the mobile network operator space. For us, though, the NOFO 2 offering or the NOFO 2 funding has been instrumental also in terms of us being able to ramp a US-based development team to go after these opportunities and repatriate some of this technology to the US.
Kyle?
Yeah, I think Glenn covered a lot of ground there. What maybe I would double down on is just this concept of innovation. We believe we'll have to earn it in order to succeed in the MNO networks. And Amanda talked a little bit about that in the structure of NOFO 2, where we align in a partnership with these mobile network operators. Open RAN provides the structure, but it doesn't provide the motivation. The motivation is going to be innovative solutions. And Glenn shared an example of our air to ground where we conquered some unique innovations to make that work. Similarly, in the MNO space, we can develop new things that they will want, that will enable new revenue streams for them. And as those new new innovations become available, they'll then drive the acceptance. And Open RAN provides this very nice open structure and standard for us to come and integrate. We don't have to invent that on the fly to integrate these innovations. So I think it's maybe as part of the hype cycle, right? For a while, it was Open RAN, will solve everything, and at half the cost. And I think maybe the more accurate story that we're seeing, and we're starting to see success stories, is that Open RAN will drive innovation, and those innovations will be tangible, and will take some time to integrate into the mobile network operator networks.
Yeah. Well said, Kyle. I wanted to move on to sort of the state of play of Open RAN, and I find myself, just from our vantage point, asking this question virtually every time we get in front of folks like yourselves about almost like justifying Open RAN, even though the public sector is utilizing Open RAN for these innovative solutions that you've all referenced, and the private sector, of course, is leveraging Open RAN as well. But we're still asking the question. So I'm almost wondering if it's a fair question to even ask at this point. So Amanda, I'll start with you. Where do you see Open RAN traction at this time in the marketplace?
Yeah, it's a great question. And obviously something, it's front and center to what we're doing here at the Innovation Fund. It has been slow, right? It definitely has not been as fast as a commercial adoption, I think, is, of course, I would like to see. But I do think that even from the little time the Innovation Fund has been in existence, I think we have had a significant, robust impact on the ecosystem, right? So we've seen AT&T cite the Innovation Fund with driving them working towards open and interoperable. I don't know if that's what's pushing them to make Ericsson be open, but there was an announcement that AT&T was able to integrate the Onefinity radios with their baseband. So, those are all steps in the right direction. We've seen Verizon talk about their distributed antenna systems where they're using open front haul interfaces, right? Both two big US mobile network operators leaning forward into open. The other thing I think that's been a success that I hope we can claim at NTIA, something that we did or we helped Addis facilitated pulling together industry to publish what they called a minimum viable profile. And the concept around the minimum viable profile was to allow some of these smaller companies to understand what at a minimum what requirements are to get into mobile network operator networks. At a basic level, Verizon, AT&T, T-Mobile are all the same, right? At some level, you have to be able to have your phone communicate and have data and phone calls. So getting that on paper and being able to publish that and doing so within the past year, I think has been a big success. So, all of these things are happening. Of course, I would like to see it faster. My hope is that the private networks and the demonstrations of Open RAN in those enterprise solutions are what demonstrates the innovation, which is the tipping point to drive the broader commercial adoption, right? Because, pushing an entire ecosystem to adopt something that, I can't necessarily say it's better, but if we have real world private networks or private enterprises leveraging open and interoperable to do these unique and innovative things, I think that is when we'll really start to see the progress and the opening up or the acceptance of open and interoperable networks.
Yeah. Glenn, anything to piggyback on there?
Yeah, yes. So agree with all of what Amanda just talked about. Let me just also talk sort of step back. I would say that whenever new technologies are introduced into the market, I think we can all agree that there's usually less change in the short term than you were expecting, and more change in the long term than you were expecting.
Yeah.
And one of the ways to characterize this is, Gartner, has this hype cycle. And I would say that maybe 2 years ago we were at the peak, or 2.5 years ago we were at the peak of the hype cycle on Open RAN. And then, sort of reality starts to step in. It's a little bit tougher to introduce a new technology into the market. But in the long term, when you are introducing a technology that enables a disruption in the market, that enables new, smaller, more innovative companies to disrupt the market, that disruption will eventually take effect. Maybe just go back to the original concept. The original concept of Open RAN was to use sort of IT style disaggregation and apply it to the RAN. And the RAN would be the next network function to be virtualized. But along the way, we learned a lot. RAN workloads are different. They're exacting. They require very high processing power. The baseband compute, is split between the CU, which can be centralized and running in a cloud, and the distributed unit, which can't be centralized and can't be running in a cloud. The distributed unit needs dedicated hardware. And so there's not a one-to-one relationship between IT style disaggregation and what we were facing in the RAN. There was also no broad-based ecosystem for Open RAN radios, and NTIA is directly, the NOFO 2 is directly dealing with broadening the ecosystem for Open RAN radios. Interoperability was also a challenge. Open RAN compliance didn't mean interoperability. Each new vendor-to-vendor combination requires several weeks and months of testing. Matching release roadmaps between vendors is a challenge, but the NTA also dealt with that one directly through the Open RAN interoperability labs. And so then, as we get into this, we were able to start to knock down the challenges and use those to bootstrap ourselves into a solution that is deployable globally and will take effect. And so I maintain that in the long run, there will be much Open RAN progress going forward, because the seeds have been planted, and we're already making significant progress on the mobile operator front. I'm very bullish on Open RAN going forward. The Rakuten has been Open RAN from the very beginning, but also Vodafone, Telefonica, several other European operators have embraced Open RAN, and we will eventually get there with them. And then most recently, the deal between AT&T's push on Open RAN and the deal with Ericsson is strategic. It's strategic in the Open RAN ecosystem. It will drive an increasing Open RAN ecosystem. Radios, RApps, XApps, other types of capabilities, interfacing, in this case, into the Ericsson baseband. I expect that as AT&T rolls this out, and as AT&T becomes successful with this approach, other operators certainly going to consider and perhaps will implement something similar going forward. I think this is an opportunity for small vendors to participate in the AT&T network by partnering with AT&T, partnering with Ericsson, and introducing their innovative applications, innovative capabilities into the network. But the small vendors, we need to earn it. It's not going to be granted to us. We need to develop world-class solutions.
Mm-hmm.
What Open RAN enables us to do is specialize in the solution areas that we can make a difference, that we can focus, and then leverage the ecosystem for the rest of the solution. So I do see traction within the mobile network operator space, and I expect that traction is going to continue between now and the 6G timeframe in 2030. I also think that we are seeing traction in the neutral host space. Neutral host is implemented ubiquitously in the in-building space. In-building networks are almost by definition neutral host networks, and that's an ongoing operator challenge, is to build out in-building networks in a competitive and cost-efficient way. Open RAN is inherently multi-tenant because of the shared radios. The interop is much more manageable inside for in-building networks. And so we see in-building neutral host market migrating toward Open RAN over the next 3, 4, 5 years. And that migration is underway already. We also see, we talked about the private networks, but many private networks have been implemented using Open RAN technology because of its programmability. So I'm bullish on the future of Open RAN. It will continue to drive increasing traction. I'm with Amanda. It's been slow, but that doesn't mean that it's not going to happen. I think it is going to happen, and I think it's going to continue to increase in momentum.
Yeah. Kyle, Glenn and Amanda really covered a lot as far as the state of play of Open RAN. So I wanted to transition over to some of the challenges ahead for us in the Open RAN sector. Unless you wanted to add anything, we'll go ahead and switch over to the challenges.
No, the challenges sound good. I'm happy to address them. I think it really extends on what we were just talking about, right? Glenn just mentioned we're seeing traction in building, and there's a few things driving that. Private networks, which drive innovation, the need for a shared infrastructure, which drives the need for a common interface, which really forever has been RF. RF was the common interface, right? You plug RF into a DAS, everybody plugs RF into a DAS. Now we have options with Open RAN for a common interface to plug in without turning us into RF, which drives advantages. And then you have an easier IoT challenge indoors. It's easier to manage certain interference features and certain inner workings. And so the challenges that we're seeing really play into that, right? You have a challenge in IoT, and it's taken time to get that worked out. And we have more work to do there. And alongside the challenge in IoT is the challenge in lifecycle management. So once you get through the initial IoT testing phase with any network, now you have upgrades, you have new features. So when you're rolling out the next new feature, when you're starting to move to 6G, how do you coordinate across the suppliers? How do you roll out software when you have 4 different suppliers in that ecosystem? All of that requires us to continue to drive innovation around the automation of how we test these networks. The more we can automate, the more we can leverage AI, the more that frankly that the mobile network operators develop this skill set. If you think about the mobile network operators over the last 10 to 15 years, IoT between the layers of the RAN stack was not a skill set that they used. Everyone they used was monolithic, right? So Ericsson did their thing, Nokia did their thing. There wasn't a need to have expertise in that area, and so they're having to develop that expertise, and that also takes time. So I think the challenge really comes down to the ecosystem, number one, which the funding here is certainly helping us address, and the IoT systems, which the funding is also helping us address. And not to just hammer this too many times, but we see traction. It's taking longer than everybody thought, maybe 2 years ago, but it is happening. And specifically, we're seeing more openness and more traction in brownfield applications, right? Which has always been the challenge. You have an existing network, you need to keep that feature set, you need to keep everything rolling along to keep your revenue stream going as an operator. And so how do you manage the risk of introducing new vendors? That's a challenge. And due to a lot of the efforts over the last couple of years, we're starting to see these conversations take place. How can I integrate this new innovation? And that's the first step. So like Glenn, very bullish on Open RAN, bullish that it will drive continued innovations and provide open infrastructure that can continue to help really the U.S. lead. And I think we'll get into that maybe more in a little bit, but it opens up opportunities for suppliers like us, and we're really excited about it.
Yeah, Amanda, I wanted to go over to you and then have Glenn finish us off on these challenges. You and I, Amanda, have started talking about the challenges with Open RAN dating back to February of 2024. Now we're in September of 2025. Have those challenges changed at all?
I mean, I think Glenn and Kyle captured the challenges pretty well, right? So the interoperability, the challenge of trying to break into a market space that is resistant to change, I think a lot of those things have remained consistent. The one thing we didn't really talk about today, albeit definitely at the front of my mind as part of the US government, is the security of these networks, right? So
Yeah.
I don't want that to get lost, right? So, the drive to try to have US leadership back in telecommunications is something we're interested in, while ensuring that as we're opening these networks, I think it does provide an opportunity to more easily provide security, right? Many people will say, well, you've got all these new surface areas for attack, but we also have ways to quickly go in and create software solutions to fix the problems and hopefully do so in a more rapid and seamless manner. So security is definitely at the forefront of my mind. I think the US government is definitely interested in ensuring that the commercial telecommunications networks are secure. Much of what we're doing would be focused around the thought that open and interoperable networks, that we can incorporate security by design, right? It's not something we're patching on at the end. And it's a real opportunity to try to build that in such that, nothing is going to be perfect, right? There are always going to be vulnerabilities and we're going to have to address them. But building an architecture such that we can rapidly go in and fix it, install patches, and really secure the networks is something that we need to continue to have at the forefront and make sure that it's a challenge that we're not forgetting about.
Yeah. Glenn, if you could touch on some of the challenges that our speakers alluded to a bit, and then maybe looking ahead and what's next for this U.S. leadership that Amanda was talking about as we move to this next G, i.e. 6G. Glenn.
Yeah. Let me just touch on a couple of points. I just want to pick up on one of the areas that I think we're making pretty good improvements on. Carl talked about this. Is the interop, both learning how to increasingly optimize and automate that interop so that we get considerably faster at it. I also think that with respect to the security issue that Amanda had talked about, it's front and center. It's absolutely front and center, both for the mobile operators and any other consumer of wireless technology today. These networks have to be able to be secured, and I actually think that we can also use Open RAN and the open interfaces to enable us to secure every piece of that network connectivity in a much more robust way going forward. So as we look forward, obviously the next G on the agenda is 6G. Call it the 2030 timeframe as notionally when 6G would be able to be introduced. We see Open RAN as being completely pervasive in the development of 6G. In other words, the interfaces are going to be, not just by definition open, but what we're going to start to see, and we're already seeing it actually, is individual innovative vendors focusing on different aspects of the stack. Just because as we move forward and we look at what will the building blocks be of 6G be? Yes, the big vendors are going to have a big role to play, no question. But small innovative vendors are going to be able to take advantage of Open RAN to create the innovations that will both create great business opportunities, but also create the opportunity to innovate in a meaningful way here in the US. What are the building blocks of 6G? AI native. That's one of the key building blocks. Basically, introducing AI, machine learning into the control, the optimization, the self-healing of the network. Another interesting innovation, the self-read massive MIMO. You think about today we have coordinated multi-point, or in the 5G standard, multi-TRP. It's just where you have one baseband, multiple radios that can be coordinated into a single cell. That concept gets expanded in 6G, where we have many more access points being coordinated by a single baseband solution, introducing this concept of self-read massive MIMO, or in other words, a very large cell that doesn't suffer degradation at the cell edge. A big one, integrated sensing and communication, is a big area of research right now, and we're starting to see some really interesting innovations in the area of sensing, and I see that as being something that is going to be a sort of a fundamental part of 6G imaging, positioning, identifying, incoming drones, what have you. Another building block in 6G, advanced spectrum utilization, taking advantage of much, wider spectrum bandwidths. Even discussion of finding a way to utilize the terahertz band, which just introduces a much larger aggregate bandwidths to work with, and then the coordination across all of those different spectrum bands. And maybe finally, one of the interesting areas that's being discussed is this area of edge intelligence, pushing compute, AI closer to the end user, requires some clever innovation. And I would say that there is this massive investment that is going on right now in data centers. In fact, almost an unbelievable investment going on in data centers, increasing by a factor of 5, let's say, over the last 4 years. The big web scale players obviously investing heavily in data centers to implement AI, to implement the large language models for the learning function of AI, and then of course inference will be pushed out to the edge of the network. And I see 6G will play ultimately in this evolving data center architecture of the future. It's definitely a huge investment wave to tap into. The world is moving toward these highly distributed, latency sensitive workloads, and those workloads will be undertaken, or many of those workloads will be undertaken at the edge of the network. Usually, we think of the edge of the network being defined by the radio, because all endpoints are ultimately wireless endpoints: drones, robotics, smartphones, sensors. All endpoints are going to be wireless endpoints. Most are today, video cameras, etc. And so the radio defines the edge of the network, and that radio is going to be where there is an intensive amount of processing going on. And we need to be able to enable that increase in processing at the edge of the network by integrating, let's say, AI, not just into the RAN, but in some cases into the radio. And I think that's a really exciting area of innovation going forward that is going to offer opportunities for small vendors like Airspan, as well as the large vendors that are already pre-existing in the network. So exciting times ahead. We're bullish, and we're bullish on 6G because there's a lot of opportunities for innovation going forward, and opportunities for the U.S. to lead.
Yeah. Hey, Kyle, I wanted to ask you one question before we go. Amanda talked about security. Glenn talked about interoperability. When it comes to Open RAN and the importance of that, is there a facet of Open RAN that we haven't given enough attention to, maybe it broadly or in this discussion, that you think deserves more attention?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we've covered so much of what we see happening already. Maybe what I would say to kind of summarize is both internally to Airspan, but also across the ecosystem. What what maybe we haven't given enough credit to are these small commercial wins, or just stacking wins, week after week, month after month, with technologies that matter. There's been a lot of press about moving whole networks and everything that Open RAN can do. But what we really maybe have missed, maybe as a whole ecosystem, is that month after month there are new innovations happening. There are new innovations that are moving us towards 6G, and more importantly, there's new innovations that customers are paying for, that are commercial wins. And as we look at how well we're doing and where we need to adjust, I think it's super important to consider those just kind of methodical, week by week commercial wins, because that's what will build this industry. We'll have a few big announcements, like the AT&T Ericsson announcement, for example. But as this new technology is adopted, it'll be things like our air to ground win. It'll be things like in building systems, moving more towards a common infrastructure without the need of RF, which has a whole world of benefits, right, that people are willing to pay for. And so maybe not an aspect of Open RAN technology per se, but an aspect of how we view the momentum, I think that we should really watch closely as an industry.
Yeah. And very quickly, Amanda, if you don't mind, and you mentioned this a couple times before, and Glenn just referenced this, the high importance of the public and private partnership in the Open RAN space, and really allowing and really opening the floodgates, if you will, for these smaller vendors to innovate. What's the importance of that, Amanda? And again, I know you mentioned this before, but it is important. I wanted you to possibly mention it again.
Yeah, I think I agree with Glenn and Kyle. I think the future of telecommunications, I hope, will be open and interoperable, right, to facilitate the innovation that's been talked about. It needs to be open. If we really want to have AI at the edge, or AI integrated, or an AI native like fabric, I think there needs to be a melding of mobile and IT, and a coming together of those networks. I think we've got the building blocks to do that. And I think the key to that is open and interoperable, right? So understanding the radio unit is that physical piece, but the virtualization, the softwareization is something the US is really good at. And I think we are poised to take a lead. It will take time to get there, but my hope is that is where we see ourselves in 10 years, right? And the innovation cycle will hopefully be quicker, right? Because you will have the ability for those smaller entities to hopefully more easily develop solutions, be it an app, whatever the next Uber might be, for 6G. Having that open architecture will drive that innovation ecosystem, and that's really what I'm excited about for the future.
Yeah. Glenn, any final words?
Big believer in public-private partnerships, and this is the way that we're going to ultimately evolve and innovate, and also repatriate some technology to the U.S.
Interesting. Well, Glenn, Chief Executive Officer of Airspan Networks, we appreciate your time, and it's great to have you on for the first time, by the way. Maybe we'll do this again sometime soon.
Good to be here. Thanks.
Yep. And Amanda Tillman, of course, of the NTIA. We always appreciate your time and giving us the update of the next NOFO, if you will, and anything going on in the Open RAN space. So thank you. And Kyle Allen, Senior Vice President, Strategic Operations of Airspan Networks. We appreciate your time as well.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot. And to our audience out there, thank you once again to our speakers on Open RAN innovation, driving innovation for 4G and 5G networks. For this session on demand, please go to thenetworkmediagroup.com on September 15th. So long.